Hi, I'm Sarah from jacksonsjob.com. Today let's make a delicious coconut cake. This is quick and simple and in your oven within minutes. Let's get started. Let's preheat our oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 180 degrees Celsius. And if you need more time, just go to the link in the description box below to get the full written recipe and nutrition. I start out with 3/4 of a cup of oil, which is 180 milliliters. And to that I'll add in 4 eggs or 200 grams. If you like, you can add in 1 teaspoon of vanilla or 5 milliliters, or even some coconut extract. And you'll also want to use 1 teaspoon or 5 milliliters. And then what I do is I just break up the eggs gently and I whisk these two things together. Now if you're wondering why I'm not using butter here and instead I'm using oil, I like to use oil a lot of times, especially when I'm using a nice flavor like coconut so it gets to shine. And then also you save a lot of saturated fat. In this particular recipe, I'm saving 100 grams. Now to these eggs and oil mixture, I'm adding in 3/4 of a cup of sugar, which is 150 grams, and I'm just giving this a very quick stir. Don't worry about over mixing this. It's a very forgiving recipe. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1½ teaspoons of baking powder, which is 6 grams, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt, which is 2.5 grams, and put it in 1½ cups of flour, which is 225 grams. And I'm just going to stream this in a little bit at a time. This helps me keep from getting lumps. Now the reason why I decided to stream this in a little bit at a time instead of using a sifter is because I was thinking about all of you. When I first started baking, all I had was a wooden spoon and a bowl. I didn't even have an electric mixer, so I learned to do a lot of things by hand. So whenever you learn that you don't need a sifter and you can still make delicious things, you get really kind of excited about it. Sometimes I get really frustrated with the bakers out there that they will tell you that you'll need these special equipments like a $300 stand mixer to make bread when all you really need is your hands. Yes, it's convenient, but for the most part, all you need is a whisk, a spoon, a bowl, and that's about it, and you can make almost everything. There are a few exceptions, but people have forgotten how to make things by hand, and I really like to connect back to that. And finally, I'm putting in the last of the flour. Now, if you noticed, I made a little bit of a mess here, and I decided not to edit this out because I wanted to show how forgiving this recipe is. Because this recipe uses more flour to begin with and you get a nice dome top, you don't have to worry about if some spills out. Now, of course, other recipes are more stingy and you have to be very careful. And honestly, if I was using a taller bowl, I wouldn't have had made a mess. But I used my glass bowl so you guys could see it better. Now what you could do is take a spatula and switch over and you can scrape off what's on the whisk just to get every little bit off. And I like to take this and put in the coconut flakes at this time. It just helps you fold it in a lot better. I'm using 1/2 cup or 55 grams. And by folding it in at the end, you get a really nice evenly distributed amount of coconut. If you like, you could toast the coconut before you put it in, but I actually like the texture of the raw coconut as it bakes. It gives it a nice chewy texture. One option you could do would take some more coconut and toast it and put it on top just as it's almost finished baking and let it bake in. It is super delicious when you do that. And this will be a very thin batter, similar to the box cakes mix if you make it at home. And if you noticed, it didn't take much longer than if you were making a store-bought box brand. And finally, I pour this into a 9x5 or a 23x13 centimeter pan that I've lined with parchment paper. If you do not have parchment paper, just be sure to grease it well. Like use ham or some flour and butter. That way it'll come out easily. Non-stick pans are notorious for sticking for some reason. I don't even like to use the non-stick pans, but it's almost impossible to find a loaf pan that's not non-stick locally. I've been looking forever. And if you weren't holding your bowl awkwardly like this, it would have already been in the oven. I don't recommend, if you're ever going to make your own videos, to do this angle because it is very awkward trying to get things put together. And finally, you want to just give it a light tap. You don't have to do this step, but what it does is it helps release any air pockets. Now you'll want to bake this anywhere from 45 to 55 minutes. It depends on your oven. Check it with a toothpick, and when it comes out clean in the center, it's done. Now you'll want to let it rest for about 5 to 10 minutes before you remove it from the pan. That will help it shrink from the sides a little bit more and make it easier for removal. The reason why I like to use the parchment paper is because you can use it like a sling and just lift it right out. Now ideally you'd let this cool completely before cutting, but it can be eaten warm. Just remember, when you cut into a cake when it's still warm, it loses a lot of moisture and it won't last as long. So if you want this to last throughout the week, let it cool. I'll slice it open so you can see what it looks like. You can use an ordinary knife, but it really is beneficial to use a bread knife here. It will slice right through it. But as you can see, I'm using just a plain old paring knife and I'm not having much difficulty. As you can see, this cake has a very lovely crumb texture. It's nice and closed and it's moist and delicious, and the coconut flakes is throughout. If you like coconut, you are just going to adore this cake. You'll be surprised at how quickly it is gone when you take it to functions. For this and other recipes, be sure to visit us at jacksonsjob.com. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe for more videos.